Have you ever heard of a teenager who loved video games, computers, and hanging out with friends, but is now known as the first millennial saint of the Catholic Church? This is the story of Carlo Acutis, a boy who lived only 15 short years, but left behind a legacy that continues to inspire millions around the world. Asterisk, childhood and faith. Asterisk, Carlo was born in London on May 3, 1991, but grew up in Milan, Italy. He came from a family that wasn't deeply religious, Very young age, Carlo showed an unusual love for prayer and for God. At only 7 years old, he was allowed to receive Holy Communion early because of his extraordinary devotion. From that day, he made the Eucharist the very center of his life, every single day. Carlo attended Mass every day. He prayed the Rosary, and every week he went to confession. But what made him different was not only his faith, but how he lived it out. He was kind to everyone. He defended classmates who were bullied. He gave his savings to help the homeless. And whenever he met someone struggling, Carlo would say, "Everyone is born as an original, but many die as a copy. Don't copy anyone else, just follow Jesus." Asterisk, technology. As a mission, Carlo was not a monk or a priest. He was a normal teenager who loved playing soccer, enjoyed video games like Pac-Man and PlayStation, and loved making people laugh. But he had one special gift. He was talented in computers and technology, and he decided to use that gift for God. Carlo began creating a website that documented and explained Eucharistic miracles, those extraordinary moments in history when bread and wine truly appeared as the body and blood of Christ. His goal was simple: to help people believe that Jesus is truly present in the Eucharist. He once said, "To always be close to Jesus. That is my life plan." His website grew beyond what anyone imagined. It became an exhibition that has traveled all over the world, from Europe to the Americas, from Asia to Africa. That's why people began to call him God's influencer. Asterisk, illness and death. When Carlo was just 15, his life took a sudden turn. He was diagnosed with an aggressive form of leukemia. Most teenagers would be angry, afraid, or desperate. But Carlo accepted his illness with remarkable peace. He offered up his suffering for the Church and for the Pope, and he told his mother, "I am happy to die, because I have lived my life without wasting even a minute on things that do not please God." On October 12, 2006, Carlo passed away. He was only 15 years old. He was buried in Assisi, the city of Saint Francis, whom he greatly admired. Asterisk, path to sainthood after his death. Many people who knew Carlo began speaking about his holiness. And soon, stories of miracles began to appear. One boy in Brazil was healed of a rare illness after his family prayed through Carlo's intercession. A girl in Italy recovered miraculously after a severe accident. These miracles were investigated and officially recognized by the Church. In 2020, Carlo was beatified in Assisi. His body, dressed in jeans and sneakers, was displayed for the faithful, a powerful reminder that holiness is possible for young people today. And in September 2025, the Church canonized Carlo Acutis as a saint, the very first millennial saint, *Acutis, and inspiration today. Thousands of pilgrims travel to Assisi each year to pray at his tomb. Schools around the world, from Brazil to the United States, have been named after him. And young Catholics create art, music, and even digital projects in his honor. Carlo's life proves that sainthood is not only for priests, nuns, or martyrs. It is for every one of us, no matter how young, no matter how ordinary. He lived like any other teenager. But with one difference, he put God first in everything. Carlo Acutis once said, "The Eucharist is my highway to heaven." And perhaps that is the message he leaves for us today. Holiness doesn't mean doing extraordinary things. It means doing ordinary things with extraordinary love. So I leave you with a question. If a 15-year-old boy could change the world with faith and a laptop, what could you do with your life if you let God lead the way? Have you ever wondered what makes a saint? We often think of saints as people from the distant past, monks in monasteries, martyrs in ancient arenas, or missionaries in faraway lands. But what if I told you that a boy born in 1991 who loved soccer, Pac-Man, and his PlayStation is now known as the first millennial saint of the Catholic Church? This is the story of Carlo Acutis, a teenager who lived only 15 years, yet left behind a witness so powerful that the whole world is still talking about him. And in this video, we will journey together through his life, his childhood, his passions, his faith, his suffering, his miracles, and the legacy that continues to transform hearts today. By the end, perhaps we will begin to understand the answer to one question. Why did Carlo Acutis become a saint? Childhood and early faith. Carlo was born in London on May 3, 1991, to Italian parents, but soon moved to Milan, Italy. His family was wealthy and culturally Catholic, but not particularly devout. From his earliest days, however, Carlo showed something extraordinary. As a toddler, he would point at churches and insist on going inside to greet Jesus. By age 7, He was given a special exception to receive his first communion early. From that day forward, the Eucharist became the center of his life. Every day, Carlo went to Mass. Every day, he prayed the Rosary. Every week, he went to confession. His spirituality wasn't just about rituals. It shaped the way he lived. He was kind, always ready to defend classmates who were bullied. He gave his pocket money to help the homeless. He encouraged friends to look beyond temporary pleasures and focus on what truly matters. And he had a favorite phrase he often repeated: "Everyone is born as an original, but many die as a copy." Don't copy anyone else, just follow Jesus. A teenager like us, despite his devotion, Carlo was not a gloomy or distant boy. He was joyful, funny, and very relatable. He loved soccer. He loved video games, Pac-Man, PlayStation, Super Mario. He enjoyed movies, pizza, and hanging out with friends. In many ways, Carlo was like any other teenager of his time. But here was the difference. While most teens lived for themselves, Carlo lived for God and for others. He made time for friends, but never missed daily Mass. He loved playing, but also loved visiting the elderly and volunteering at soup kitchens. Carlo showed the world that holiness is not about leaving life behind. It's about living ordinary life with extraordinary love. Chapter 3: Technology for God. 9 minutes. Carlo had a natural gift for computers. While still in middle school, he taught himself programming, web design, and video editing. Teachers were amazed at his skills, but instead of using technology for fame or money, Carlo used it as a mission. He began creating a website that cataloged and explained Eucharistic miracles throughout history, those moments when the bread and wine, visibly, became the body and blood of Christ. His goal: to rekindle faith in the Eucharist, especially for young people. Carlo once said, "To always be close to Jesus, that is my life plan." His online project became so successful that it turned into a global exhibition, traveling from Europe to the Americas, Africa, and Asia. Soon, people began calling him God's influencer. Imagine a teenager using the internet not for himself, but to lead millions closer to Christ. Asterix, suffering, and offering in 2006. At just 15 years old, Carlo's life changed suddenly. He was diagnosed with an aggressive form of leukemia. Most teenagers, in his place, would despair. But Carlo's faith only grew stronger. He calmly told his parents, "I am happy to die, because I lived my life without wasting even a minute on things that do not please God." He offered his suffering for the Pope and for the Church. In his final days, he received the Eucharist daily in the hospital. On October 12, 2006, Carlo passed away. He was buried in Assisi, the city of Saint Francis, whom he admired deeply. And even in death, his peaceful face seemed to radiate joy. Miracles and beatification after his passing. Devotion to Carlo spread quickly. A boy in Brazil with a rare illness was miraculously healed after prayers to Carlo. A girl in Italy recovered unexpectedly after a severe accident. These miracles were investigated and confirmed by the Church. In 2020, Carlo Acutis was beatified in Assisi. His body was displayed in jeans and sneakers, a modern image of holiness. Thousands of young people came to venerate him, inspired by the idea that sainthood was possible for their generation. And in 2025, the Church canonized him as a saint. First millennial saint asterisk, legacy and call to holiness today. Pilgrims travel from around the world to Assisi to pray at his tomb. Schools, youth groups, and parishes bear his name. His website on Eucharistic Miracles is still online, drawing new generations closer to Christ. But perhaps Carlo's greatest legacy is the message he left behind. Holiness is not reserved for priests, nuns, or extraordinary heroes. Holiness is for everyone. Carlo lived like any teenager, but with one difference. He put God first in everything. He reminds us that the Eucharist is, in his words, the highway to heaven, and that in every ordinary action, playing, studying, helping, laughing, we can glorify God. Carlo Acutis was not a superhero. He was not from another time. He was one of us. He proves that even in the digital age, in the middle of ordinary teenage life, sainthood is possible. And that is the challenge for us today. If a 15-year-old boy with faith and a laptop could change the world, what can you and I do with our lives if we let God lead the way? Carlo once said, "The Eucharist is my highway to heaven." May his witness inspire us to walk that same road with courage, with love, and with trust in God. Imagine a teenage boy, a boy who loved soccer, who laughed with friends, who played Pikmin and watched The Simpsons. A boy who carried a camera everywhere and built websites for fun. Now, imagine this same boy, just 15 years old, dying of leukemia. And today, September 7th, 2025, in St. Peter's Square, that very boy has been canonized a saint by Pope Leo XIV. This is the extraordinary, yet very real, story of Carlo Acutis, a millennial, a computer genius, and no God's influencer in heaven. Childhood and early faith. Carlo was born in London on May 3, 1991, but grew up in Milan, Italy. His parents were not especially religious, yet from an early age, Carlo showed a surprising love for prayer. At just 7 years old, he received permission to make his first Holy Communion early because of his unusual devotion. From then on, the Eucharist became, in his own words, my highway to heaven. Every day, Carlo attended Mass. Every day, he prayed the Rosary. Every week, he went to confession. He didn't keep this faith to himself. Carlo defended classmates who were bullied. He gave food and sleeping bags to the homeless. He saved his pocket money to help the poor, and he often told people, everyone is born as an original, but many die as a copy. Don't copy anyone else. Follow Jesus. Technology as a mission. Carlo was not a monk. He was not a priest. He was a normal teenager in the 1990s and early 2000s. He played PlayStation, enjoyed Pac-Man, loved soccer, and had a sweet tooth. But he had one unique gift: technology. By the age of 14, Carlo had taught himself computer coding, web design, and video editing. Instead of using these talents only for entertainment, he decided to use them for God. He began creating a website that documented Eucharistic miracles from around the world, moments in history where the bread and wine of the Mass became visibly the body and blood of Christ. His mother later recalled that Carlo spent months gathering material, traveling, photographing sites, and programming the pages himself. That website grew into a worldwide exhibition. Today, it has traveled to every continent, inspiring countless Catholics to rediscover the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. For this, people began calling him God's influencer. Illness, an offering of suffering. In October 2006, Carlo suddenly fell ill. The doctors diagnosed him with acute promyelocytic leukemia, an aggressive form of blood cancer. Most teenagers in his situation would be angry, fearful, or desperate. But Carlo responded with peace. He offered his suffering to God for the Pope and for the Church. To his mother, he said, "I am happy to die because I have not wasted a single minute on things that do not please God." Carlo passed away on October 12, 2006, at the age of just 15. He was buried in Assisi, the city of his beloved Saint Francis. Miracles and beatification. After his death, devotion to Carlo grew quickly. People around the world began praying for his intercession, and miracles followed. First miracle, 2013. Confirmed, 2020. A boy in Brazil was born with a severe pancreatic defect. He could not digest food and suffered terribly. After prayers through Carlo's intercession, the boy was suddenly and completely healed. Doctors confirmed there was no medical explanation. This miracle was approved by the Vatican. And in October 2020, Pope Francis beatified Carlo in Assisi. His body was displayed in jeans and sneakers, everyday clothes, a powerful reminder that holiness is possible for young people today. Second miracle, 2022. Confirmed 2024 in Costa Rica. A young woman named Valeria suffered a serious brain injury after a cycling accident. Her mother prayed at Carlo's tomb in Assisi. The very next day, Valeria awoke and recovered fully, stunning her doctors. This second miracle was recognized by the Church and paved the way for canonization today. September 7th, 2025, and now, on this day, September 7th, 2025, in St. Peter's Square, in front of tens of thousands of pilgrims and millions watching worldwide, Pope Leo XIV has declared Carlo Acutis a saint of the Catholic Church. Carlo becomes the first millennial saint, canonized alongside Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati. The Church proclaims with certainty what many already believed. Carlo is in heaven, interceding for us, showing that sainthood is not reserved for the distant past, but is alive in the digital age. Legacy and closing reflection today. Carlo's tomb in Assisi draws pilgrims from around the globe. Schools, youth groups, and parishes have taken his name. His website and Eucharistic exhibition continue to travel the world. Carlo teaches us something timeless. Holiness does not mean doing extraordinary things. It means doing ordinary things with extraordinary love. He was a boy of his time genes. Soccer, PlayStation, the internet, but he placed God at the very center of it all. As he once said, to always be close to Jesus, that's my life plan. And now, the Church lifts him up for the world as a model of what it means to be holy. So the question remains for us. If a 15-year-old boy could change the world with his faith and his laptop, what could God do with your life if you let him lead the way?
Carlo Acutis and the Four Popes, A Journey to Sainthood. On September 7th, 2025, in St. Peter's Square, the Catholic Church celebrates a historic moment: the canonization of Carlo Acutis, a teenager from Milan who died at only 15, but whose faith and witness have touched millions. But this is more than just the story of a boy who became a saint. It is also the story of how four popes, John Paul II, Benedict XVI, Francis, and now Leo XIV, each became part of his journey to sainthood. Childhood. Inspired by John Paul II. Carlo was born in 1991, during the long pontificate of St. John Paul II, a pope who captured the imagination of the world with his global travels and his love for young people. Carlo's Polish babysitter, deeply devoted to John Paul II, first nurtured his early love for prayer and devotion. In October of the Jubilee year 2000, Carlo's family traveled to Rome. There, standing in St. Peter's Square, Carlo, just 9 years old, witnessed John Paul II entrusting the new millennium to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. From that moment, Carlo's faith deepened. He became devoted to the Eucharist, attending daily Mass, praying the Rosary, and spending time in adoration. His young life was already marked by a love for Christ at the center. Offering his suffering. For Benedict XVI. When Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger was elected Pope Benedict XVI in April 2005, Carlo was 13. His mother recalled how fascinated he was by this theologian pope who so clearly defended the truth of the faith. Only a year later, Carlo was diagnosed with acute leukemia. Instead of despairing, he offered his suffering to God, for the Pope, and for the Church. He told his mother, "I offer all the suffering I will have to undergo for the Lord, for the Pope, and for the Church, so that I may go straight to heaven without having to spend time in purgatory." On October 12, 2006, Carlo passed away. He was only 15. He was buried in Assisi, the home of his beloved Saint Francis. Beatification under Pope Francis. Years later, the Church recognized Carlo's heroic virtues. In 2018, Pope Francis declared him venerable. 2 miracles attributed to Carlo's intercession were approved: the healing of a young boy in Brazil from a rare pancreatic disorder, the miraculous recovery of a girl in Italy after a serious accident. In 2020, in Assisi, Pope Francis beatified Carlo Acutis. His body, dressed in jeans and sneakers, was displayed for the faithful. A powerful reminder that
A pause in the story. The passing of Pope Francis. The Church had planned to canonize Carlo on April 27, 2025, during a great gathering of young pilgrims in Rome. But then, on Easter Monday, April 21, 2025, Pope Francis passed away. The Church entered into mourning. The canonization was postponed. Tens of thousands of young pilgrims who had already arrived in Rome remained in the Eternal City. They prayed at the Pope's funeral and kept vigil, waiting in hope for the day Carlo would be raised to the altars as a saint. Canonization by Pope Leo XIV. From that morning came renewal. The cardinals gathered in conclave, and by God's providence, the Church elected a new Pope, Leo XIV. And today, September 7, 2025, one of his first great acts as successor of Peter is to canonize Carlo Acutis, the Church's first millennial saint. In St. Peter's Square, banners of Carlo hang from the basilica. Pilgrims from around the world, young and old, families and clergy, fill the square. Many hold candles, laptops or rosaries, symbols of Carlo's unique life. A teenager who loved technology, but even more loved Christ.
Carlo's lasting legacy. Carlo's journey through 4 popes shows the hand of God at work. John Paul II inspired his childhood faith. Benedict XVI received his offering of suffering. Francis recognized his heroic witness and beatified him. And now, Leo XIV canonizes him as a saint for the Church. Carlo Acutis proves that sainthood is not only for priests, nuns, or martyrs. It is possible for a teenager, for a student, for someone who lived in our own time. His favorite phrase remains his legacy: "The Eucharist is my highway to heaven." And today, from heaven, St. Carlo Acutis continues to remind us, holiness is possible, now, here, in our daily lives. This is the story of a teenager who became a saint. And through his life, we are invited to ask ourselves, how will we let Christ transform our own story?